All right, everybody, welcome to the pregame show to get you in the know. I am Ethan Myers here with Caleb. We're going to try this again. I know I said it right last week, but Caleb Yacarino
Yep.
of Dome Discussions podcast, and we're talking Saints. Again, we're here. Talking about and something. Whether it be the season or Rattlers' career so far, but we're hopeful for today with some of the inactives and things like that Rattler would be able to get his first win because I think that would boost his confidence a lot and also help it for him to be a little easier getting that off of his shoulders and going forward instead of backwards. And I don't know if you saw the memes and the jokes about how the last I think like 7 years we started 2-0, like 5 out of the 7 years, but then we went 0-8 after that.
Yeah.
So or whatever it was. So hopefully that's the flip side of this season. But going into the game, week 3 against the Seahawks, how you feeling?
Not great. This is the first game that I have said this season that I think the Saints are going to lose, which maybe that's finally going to be the way they win. But kind of this is the first time that bias aside that I really don't know if they can win the matchups, even with the inactives. Now, do I think that the Saints are going to they could play better than last week on defense, but I'm not sure about the offense this week.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of the current status of the Saints. Even before we knew how unfortunately bad the secondary was going to look, it felt like those first 2 games at home. Last week against the 49ers didn't quite feel like a home game. But then when you think Brock Purdy and Kill are both out, like that's a game you should be able to win. And obviously we were kind of in there to the end and then it didn't quite work out. But either way, I think this is, the Seahawks are kind of like the Saints, no matter what their record is or who they have on the roster, their fans are going to show up. So, you're talking traveling 2 time zones behind. You're in, the Seahawks stadium. And I was kind of leaning the same way, but then on the flip side, I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the one that you have to take advantage of and kind of make your statement. But that doesn't change my mind on if they're going to win or not. But it's definitely the one that, I think the rest of the season you'll either shock some people or people are going to be saying the same thing they said about you, a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, the Seahawks are only, 1-1, but still you know, they went through a lot of changes too. So they're doing better than us with the current status quo. But I digress. The main thing I want to hop into first is, we kind of talked about it before we went live, is the injury report. As we know on the Saints side, Chase Young is still out. Very unfortunate because that was supposed to be a short-term injury. He could have possibly started at the beginning of the season, and now, you're talking week 3 or 4. He could have been eligible for return if they would have placed him on the correct list without having to worry about that active roster spot. And, maybe you wouldn't see so many of these guys cut and fired and put back on the practice squad the same day if we had that extra spot. But I digress. And Trevor Penny's going to be active, but not expected to start. So it's good to see that they're playing safe with that, especially with the injury there and the history there. And what I think all Saints fans secretly wanted, as weird as it sounds, is Fuaga's out, which I think helps a lot. Doesn't help a lot, but as we know, we don't want anyone to play through injury and we're talking, we finally find our groove in week 7 or 8, but we don't have our starting linemen because we decided to play both Penny and him through injuries, and now they're both hurt and we're playing mismatch. But you kind of mentioned some of the guys you needed to be out on the Seahawks side. Do you want to go over those and some of the ones that we're not happy anyone's injured, but we're happy we don't have to face them in the week that we're facing them?
Yeah, so one of my biggest worries just before I get to it going into this game was the Seahawks run defense against the
Mhm.
Saints run game because the Saints run blocking has not been good and the Seahawks run defense is very good. So it's a bad matchup already. So I really think that Spencer Rattler is going to throw a lot in this game and it's raining. So there's a lot going wrong already. But he could be throwing a lot and the Seahawks DB room is good. But with the injuries, so safety Julian Love is out. Safety rookie Nick Manenwari, I always say his last name wrong, is out. And then cornerback Devin Witherspoon is also out. So their DB room is very injured. If that's one thing the Saints can take advantage of, it's that now. Saints also don't have Vele, or Trey Palmer in this game, so that's also going to hurt. But I think the tight end's going to get a lot of work here. The Saints elevated Trayton Welch, I think it was yesterday, to the active roster. We know Jack Stoll, I'm fairly certain, is going to play, and then Juwan Johnson's going to play. I wouldn't be surprised if we see all three tight ends in this game because they're going to be the main contested catch threats.
Yeah, and I think even though he's kind of bounced around, the coaches are also pretty familiar with Kevin Austin, who they brought up to the active roster, and while he's not a one for one replacement on Vele, I think he's savvy enough to get down around that goal line and be a little more of a an inside slot threat on the goal line, which it sucks to see Vele have that touchdown, and everybody was like, "We're not even using him week 1." And then week 2, he comes out and he does what he's supposed to do for that third or fourth guy on the roster, and as a big body receiver who's he's not Julio Jones or Mike Evans big body star, but I think some people for some odd reason were expecting that, like us to just run Michael Thomas routes with him all day, but that's not what he was brought here for. But it does suck to see someone like that come in and have success, and then next week he's hurt. But at the same time, we kind of hinted at it. We don't want to see anyone play through injuries they don't need to when you're starting 0-2. Save those guys for when you're maybe 3-4 or 4-3 or something like that if you start to find your groove. But I want to hint on one thing that you mentioned with Spencer Rattler was, this could be one of those games that, I think we all saw it on social media and the praise that he got from Robert Saleh over there and the 49ers, who's an excellent D coordinator. And so it's one of those things where, you don't, I think as him, you have to come into this game still reminding yourself you're 0-8 or 0-9, whatever it is at this point, but you can't die on that hill either. Like I don't think you can let the talking heads get into your head thinking I'm better than, maybe I thought I was or people thought I was, but I think you need to carry it with a chip on your shoulder, if that makes sense. And I think this could be the game, to your point, that, Devin Neal is also out. And even though he's the third running back, it's still one less guy to take those carries. And you're going to have either Alvin Kamara be a workhorse today, or you need Spencer to make some plays, I think is what it boils down to, because that front seven of the Seahawks is going to give, especially down Fuaga. Trevor Penning may or may not start. We don't really know what's going on with him. So you're probably going to start the game down 2 linemen, and that's not fun. And and unfortunately, there's been some plays, for the other side or the middle of the line, and Eric McCoy, where I think he just needs to find his groove. But there's been some plays where you're like, you're talking 2 guards and a center out. Like, that's not going to be fun, so we'll see how it works. But, maybe we'll rely on the pitch and the screen a little more today to get Alvin Kamara going. We'll see. But as we know, week 3 in the Seahawks, and I don't want to harp on it too much because I think we talked about it a lot last week. But for lack of better words, this is one that I think we're expected to lose, but I think Spencer Rattler absolutely needs to win to change the conversation. How do you think he wins this game? Do you think he wins as a game manager, or do you think we need to cut him loose and kind of let him sling that ball the way we know he can?
I don't trust the defense enough for him to win as a game manager. I think that remember, Clint Kubiak is now the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks. This is going to be a very similar offense to what the Saints had last year. They are going to be able to control the game in the run, and they're going to be able to expose the pass defense. I really think that's what's going to happen. So Spencer Rattler is going to play hero ball during this game. And I think he has the potential to do it. We saw it last week. He made the big plays when he needed to. I am now, again, before today, the weather was not an issue, but now I'm worried about the weather because it's raining. That's going to be something to think about. But he really is going to need to make the big plays to win this game, in my opinion. And I think that Kellen Moore we're going to see him go away from the run pretty quickly. I'm very surprised that Devin Neal's out. I really want to see why he is. I don't know if it's injury or just inactive, but going into this game, that was actually one of the running backs that I kind of highlighted, because if Alvin Kamara, Alvin Kamara and Kendra Miller are being stopped at the line and not gaining those extra yards that they have been, Devin Neal would have been that player to just run up the middle and gain 4 yards for you. But now he's out, so I'm kind of confused by that. But I do think that Spencer Rattler is going to kind of need to play hero ball at times in this game.
Yeah, no, and I think, to your point about Devin Neal being the guy who will run up the middle is, when you have like a really good front seven or really just a good line on the other side, it doesn't matter how good they are. There are so many times that you're getting smacked in the face, and even if it's for a 1 yard loss or a 1 yard gain, if in the first half you've already gotten, your head rattled 15, 20 times, those guys are, no matter how good they are, like it's not fun to like just have someone run full speed at you while you're tied up with somebody else, and so I agree that was something that I think we could have used to our advantage, was kind of having that almost like a third down back, but you could have ran him on first down just to see. He gets 3 yards, great. He gets no gain. 2nd and 10 isn't the end of the world. You just don't want to lose yards on those downs. And it just gets into the groove of, if you have a 13 play drive and you've only ran the ball twice and it was, like an outside pitch or an outside tackle run or something like that, those linemen in the middle, they're still juiced up. They haven't been hit once. And now you're going to try and run it down their throats on the goal line. It's not going to be fun. But if you go and you run it up the middle 6 or 7 times on that 13 play drive, like I said, they're going to be on their back heels instead of leaning forward and stuff like that. And so I agree. That was, a little bit of an interesting, decision there. Like you said, whether it was a decision or an injury, it's an interesting one either way. But and we also don't know what happens in the locker room. Something could have happened where he didn't get any touches last week, right? Like, I don't want to speculate, but it could be something simple, which I think I would prefer it be. He's just, oh, hey, you're a healthy scratch versus there's an injury there, because I think we have enough of those, and he's the type of guy that we want to see show up in this year, next year, that could potentially be a cap relief if we have to make a decision on one of the 3 running backs which we know AK wants to retire at Saints. So I don't think that'll be huge, but Kendre Miller might feel a certain way and wants more money to stay here versus if we see Neal have a breakout season. Perfect. He's a little more expendable, but that's not really this week talk. It's just, on my mind about the running backs. But around the NFL, again, we talked about this before we went live, but Panthers are now up 20-0 on the Falcons. It's interesting that they're having such a good game. And I said before, that's perfect for us, because if they win, they'll be 1-2. The Falcons be 1-2, and hopefully we win today and we're 1-2, and then we're not dead last, for last place. Because if they win and we lose, then we're dead last again. I don't want to be there, but it's interesting to see, and we kind of talked about it at the start of the season too. Bryce Young is one of those quarterbacks that he's fun to watch when he's fun to watch, but when he's not, and he seems, who knows when he figures it out. It could be a change of scenery that he needs or something like that. But I'm just happy to see him having a good game when we essentially need him to have a good game, or the Panthers to have a good game rather. But rest of the NFL, any other games you're watching? I know we don't really have to talk about the Bucs too much. They're undefeated and probably going to remain as such, unfortunately. But any other games around the NFL slate that you're looking forward to? Oh, hey, Caleb. Sorry, I thought it was my AirPods. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
With the,
I was trying to reconnect.
With the Vikings Bengals game, that's like the one game that I feel like I've seen a million times, where the Vikings play the Bengals and the Vikings just blow out the Bengals, or the Vikings do this to one team like every year. And I mean, it looks bad for Cincinnati, which is not fun as an LSU fan to see. And then the Eagles Rams game is very interesting, because the Eagles were absolutely just nothing on offense in the first half, and now I just saw 26-21, and they're coming back against the Rams. So those are 2 games that I was watching a lot before.
Yeah, and as I said last week, and I'll probably say every week, I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. I know he gets a certain amount of hate when he has those off weeks, but I think if I'm not cheering for the Saints, unfortunately, that's like the team that I'm cheering for, and it was. I also grew up a huge Brian Dawkins fan, so I think that's another reason that I lean towards the Eagles and stuff like that. So yeah, to that point, I'm always keeping an eye on the Eagles, and hopefully the Eagles can do us a favor next week and knock off the Bucks from their undefeated run, because they have them next week, I believe. But yeah, I think the only other, aside from your point about the Vikings game, I think the only other game that I'm interested in seeing is probably the Chiefs at Giants game, because the Chiefs have kind of had a bit of an interesting season so far, going 0-2, and I think they're finally facing a bad team, right? And I think this is going to be the gauge for the Chiefs now, is where are they really this season? Because you didn't face undefeated teams, because we're all undefeated week one, right? But I think this Giants game tonight, and it's Sunday Night Football, so it's going to be fun either way. But I think it's going to be a test of where the Chiefs really this season, because are they as bad as they look right now, and what's going on with them, or are they going to have one of those games like the Vikings are having today, where they just put up 40 points and only give up 10, and you're like, okay, no, the Chiefs are still there. They just got some things to figure out, because watching the end of a dynasty is always interesting, and I don't know if they existed long enough to be a dynasty. I think Pat will carry them into it further if he needs to, but that's probably the most interesting game of this slate that I have this week, outside of some of the surprising ones like the Eagles whooping butt in the second half and the Vikings just whooping butt, period. But we'll jump into anytime touchdown scorers now. Any Saints guys on the Saints side that you see scoring? But I'm going to make it a rule real quick, and I might make it a rule for the rest of the season. We can't pick Alvin Kamara. All right, like that's the easy one, especially with Devin Neal not being there. I think he's your best back inside the red zone because he can run routes. But then the flip side is maybe Kendre's the red zone back because he can block a little better, But I don't want to say AK every week, so let's go someone other than Alvin Kamara. Who do you think?
Yeah, it was a funny thing. In our Dome discussions predictions, I think the score, like a weird score of 15-12 Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my things was I can easily see the Saints not scoring a touchdown in this game. Just like but like not Spencer Rattler playing bad. I just like the Seahawks red zone defense is very good. So that's one thing. But if they were going to score a touchdown, Juwan Johnson. It has
Okay.
to be Juwan Johnson. He is literally the only contested catch threat that I feel kind of comfortable about. And I know he had the drop touchdown, but like he's been a very good receiver this season and a really good target for Spencer Rattler. So I could see them going right back to him in the end zone.
Yeah, I like that pick. I think if you're talking red zone, he probably makes the most sense. But I'm gonna go. I know he hasn't probably started the season the way he wants to start the season, and the way Saints fans kind of got used to watching him play. But Rashid Shaheed, I mean, he's currently sitting at like 8 yards reception, which we all know that's not normal for him. He at one point, I can't remember what game it was, but it was like halfway through his like breakout season, and I remember the announcer saying, yeah, like he's not their most used guy, but when he's used, he currently has 11 catches for 7 touchdowns, and it's because he was just catching those bombs. So I would like to see them put this game in Spencer's hands a little bit. You want to win, you want to shake off this defeated nonsense and put a W in your, or put a 1 in your W column. Play the game, and I think the way you get around shrinking the field and not playing to the Seahawks advantage is take advantage of their secondary and throw it. Like Spencer has the arm to do it. So I'm going to go Rashid. I like him to get one today. I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of touches, but I think he's going to get one that matters. And that's, I would like to see him get that yards per reception up, because right now 8.5 is not right for Rashid. We all know he's an explosive play guy, and he's a heck of a receiver either way, but he's that explosive play guy we need. And I'd like to see him come out and get that. But as far as that goes, are you sticking with your final score prediction? I know you said it was a funky one. Do you remember it exactly? But
Yeah, it was. I'm fairly certain it's 15-12 because it was just like I could see, but now with the rain, now everything, I don't know, like it could just go
Right.
crazy. But also just with the offensive line injuries and like the one player I'm watching in this game. Well, there's a million players I'm watching in this game, obviously, but like the one I'm definitely focusing on is towards Shelly Simpkins, the left guard. If he is going to be the starting left guard, which I think I just got a notification that he's going to be, that's huge because the Saints have a lack of a better word, bad guard duo right now. Cesar Ruiz is struggling bad, and then the confusion of Dylan Radins or Trevor Penning, who are not on contract after this year. There's so many question marks with that part of the offensive line that if an undrafted free agent like Torricelli Simpkins is the starter and plays like one, even half of what like Eric McCoy can do, I'm fine with that right now. And that's probably the player I'm watching, but I also shouldn't feel comfortable about that. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I really don't think Saints are winning this, but I'd love them to.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure people have seen, or you guys have seen that when I tweet for Saints games, whenever we had that touchdown, that to me it really looked like he kind of landed on his butt out of bounds before that other foot got in, and I thought for sure it was going to get reversed. But then I'm confused on the catch that Alvin Kamara didn't catch but caught but fumbled. But yeah, so that's one of those things where it's like it's tough to say with this rain, especially, are any of those things going to matter? But I'll always say, to your point, I love being wrong when it's in the Saints' favor. Like I said, I thought that touchdown was coming back last week, and then I was like, hey, love to be wrong. And so hopefully you're wrong. Hopefully you love being wrong later too. But I actually think I'm in the same boat as you. I think the Saints always struggle to play. At least in the years that we had Drew Brees, there wasn't any secret. Drew Brees wasn't great in the cold, and it's not exactly cold in Seattle right now, but it's rainy, and even when they practice throughout the summer, we don't get rain like they do in Seattle, and I'm sure they practice for it. And the Saints training facilities indoors, our dome is indoors. So I think originally I was thinking 21-17, and I really wanted to give the Saints the nod, but I'm honestly thinking almost like the Saints in your realm. I'm thinking like 14-9, and the Saints don't win, unfortunately, because I think the Seahawks are going to be able to put a little bit something together in the weather, and I just don't know if the Saints are because like you said earlier, I said guards, but I forget that Penning has been kind of all over the world on that line there. But you got what it's felt like, a non-starting guard in Cesar Ruiz lately, and that's he's left something to be desired, unfortunately. But yeah, I think without really being able to establish the run game, it'll be interesting. And if we don't, then I'm thinking like 14-9. If we do, I'm thinking we could pull off that 2-point victory, that we need to win. But we just need one touchdown. I think that's all it is. I think the Saints scoring a touchdown is going to be the difference maker in this game. And I know that sounds silly because obviously you score more points than your opponent, you win the game. But it still just feels like it's going to be one of those rough sledding games where you're going to have to want it. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody on that Saints roster steps up and wants it. Obviously, we know Spencer wants it. We've seen the energy and the excitedness of him here and there. I think I forgot who it was. Someone on social media pointed out the fact that Spencer's like rarely an excited guy. Like he doesn't show a lot of emotion. And then he got that touchdown, and all of a sudden you saw it. It was like that's the fire we want, Spence. Keep that up. And I think he's got to want it more publicly, because if he wants it more publicly, then other people are going to follow him. And we talked about it last week. Who's the leader right now in that offense? Who's the Cam Jordan? Who's the Demario Davis? And we don't have one. I don't expect Spencer to be that this year, but I think his performance is probably less important than a touchdown. I would almost rather see, like, if we get a punt return or a kick return for a touchdown, which would be a blessing in this weather, we wouldn't have to run plays. I just think that's all we need is one, and everybody else will be able to do the most. So we'll see, though. We'll be back post game, as everyone knows. Pre and post game shows to get you in the know. We'll be back shortly after the game. And as I say every week, check out everybody. We're doing fun stuff with Tulane. We got Rue Brothers and Who Effing Knows and Wave Watch We got Pat's deep dive. He's quite literally giving you a deep dive into Tulane and then diving in the water to go welding. So that's fun. We're trying to keep it interesting. And of course, Pelican season's around the corner. So I'm going to take a second to plug that as well. We got Pels content. And most importantly of all, without Dome discussions, I would probably be here sitting, solo dolo doing the show. So I appreciate you guys over there doing that as well. Dome discussions, 2 episodes weekly at this point now that the season's kicked off, because they're doing pregame and postgame episodes, sometimes the same, depending on schedules. But, for the most part, I think the goal is to have after games and before game episodes, so check out them Dome discussions. And of course, every single time we post something Dome discussions, if you like one of the guys specifically, more than the other, we're not telling you who to like most, but if you do, the one here can give his own shout out. But we did it last week at Dome discussions at Caleb YAC, correct, on Twitter or X, whatever it is now. Still Twitter to me, but and of course, like I said, we tag all the guys whenever we do Dome discussions. So Nick, Kyle, Drew, they'll all be tagged. So make sure you follow them as well. And again, hopefully we come over with the W. We're saying Who Dat all day either way. And we'll catch y'all later.